Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's IBM Middleware User Community webcast. My name is Kelsey Lammers, and I'll be hosting today's webcast. I apologize for the delay. There was some technical difficulties happening this morning. Our topic for today is ITNM version 4.2, new features, and NOI 1.4 highlights. All phone lines are currently in listen-only mode. There will be a question and answer session towards the end of the presentation. However, you may ask a question at any time during the presentation using the questions window located in the control panel. Tomorrow, we will have the recording and slides of today's presentation available on the IBM Middleware User Community website for you to access. You'll receive a follow-up email with a link to the archives. Now, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. We have joining us Krishna Kodeli. He's a senior software engineer with IBM. Thank you, Krishna, for joining us today. The floor is now yours.
Thank you, Kelsey, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm sorry for the late start. Yeah, like we said, I'll kick this off. Can everybody see my screen okay, the presentation? Kelsey, do you see it?
Yes, looks great.
Okay, all right. Okay. When I put this topic, I thought, okay, I could run a few new features and whatnot. And then when I started putting the slides, I realized this is really something major. We can't just cover something in 30 minutes or 1 hour. So the reason being ITNM 4.2, sorry not for introducing myself, so I guess we can cover that at the end of the slides if we have some spare time. So ITNM 4.2 is kind of the major release pretty much after version 3.9. We had 2 releases in between, the 4.0 and the 4.1.1. And those are mainly limited platform support as well as the database support. That is mainly to cover optical RAN / 4th generation LTE networks in 4.1.1. So I would like to list a few major highlights of the 4.2 here. So this is obviously the first major release post 3.9. I'll talk about the product compatibility. And then ITNM 4.2 switched to the installation manager from a deployment engine. And finally, we are into Dash adoption. We were one version behind compared to Omnibus. We were lying down on the tip. And finally, we have applet-free network and hop use. And we have now the historical poll data that relies on the NSIM database itself. We decoupled completely from Tivoli data warehouse, so everything stays in the NSIM database. And then show performance tool that comes from the network health dashboard. So compatibility with the products, you may think that this is too many products we are combining here at solution level, but overall, if you look into the broader picture, the installation manager makes it everybody's life simpler in terms of deploying all these products. So at a minimum, the leftmost installation manager that replaced the composite offering installation / deployment engine. Obviously, you do have the Omnibus Core. It supports with the version 7.4, or if you are with the 8.1, you need to be on Fixpack 5 release. So there is a 8.1, the original GA code, and then there is a refresh build, and then 8.1 Fixpack 5 also combined as another refresh build. So you don't need to deploy 8.1 then top it with Fixpack 5. You can download straight away 8.1 Fixpack 5 and then deploy it. The Omnibus comes with the installation manager itself. So if you can download the installation manager separately from the Fix Central, or you can also use that comes with the Omnibus Core. And then if you are talking about Web GUI / WebTop, you need to be on a Fixpack 4 for the integration to work appropriately, or later versions. The minimum requirement is the Web GUI should be Fixpack 4. Again, this is also, there is a 8.1 GA code. I think that was in 2014 or somewhere, build 493, and then they had a refresh build. On top of that, they had another this bundle GA code that comes with the Fixpack 4. So you don't need to lay down the old GA on top of it, Fixpack 4. You can straight download the 8.1 Fixpack 4 code and lay it down. Obviously, we have the WAS, which is the key component, and then we have the dash that is part of the JAS SM. So these combined WAS and JAS SM with the dash replaces the TIP architecture. And obviously you have the TCR reports. That's pretty much old school. And the new key integration here is ITNCM. It's not a new integration. The integration exists in the previous releases such as ITNM 3.9 and 4.1.1. And for this release, ITNM 4.2, if you want to integrate with NCM, you need to be on 6.4.2. And obviously you have ITM, you need to be on 6.3 Fixpack 2 version. There is a prerequisite scanner that you can download from the Fix Central. I've given some highlights here where you can download from. You can run on the boxes wherever you're trying to deploy the products. ITNM configuration file isn't there in that bundle, but you can download from the URL here listed and copy into that folder before running the prerequisite scanner. The operating systems we support are Red Hat 6 and 7. No Solaris and SUSE or AX 6.1 and 7.1. One operating system requirement for ITNM is that you need to have a Python. That's because of the Apache Storm that introduced in 4.2. We'll cover that in the coming slides. Okay, coming to the installation manager. So we replaced the DE. It has a couple of modes here: administrator and user and group mode. The people who are used to have root installation, they can go with administrator mode, but we typically recommend the group mode. That's the best practice. Or you can have a non-root installation, which is a user mode. If you're concerned about installing, uninstalling and all, typically if it is a lab setup, you can deploy each product as its own user entity. So let's say you have 5 products. The 5 products can be deployed with 5 user accounts. The uninstall, reinstall, whatever, will be easier for you, and even if you are kind of a learning curve, that will make it easier. But ideally, the group mode would be the better option here. It comes with the installation manager comes with the data location and a shared location. Once it is deployed, you cannot change this location. So you first decide where you're going to lay down these 2 folders, the data and the shared. The shared location is used actually for the rollback options. So that can grow pretty big. So make sure you pick up the right partition / whichever the disk you want to lay it down, based on whichever the products you may have. The installation manager logs are in the XML format, and obviously we have several releases of the installation manager. ITNM 4.0 goes with the latest 1.8 release. So in the deployment engine, we had an option list IU where you can list out all the components you laid down. It's pretty much here. The IMCL is the tool, the command line you can run. Or you also have the option when you lay down, when you go to the GUI option, you can see which are the components that are laid down. The IMCL has a lot more options. If you run with the -H, that will list out all the components it laid down. The XML format can be converted into plain text by looking into the IMCL view log. That will turn into the readable text format. The only we have several post-installation tasks as usual. The one new thing here is because of Apache Storm, the Apache Storm must run as a non-root. So there is a new script to handle that piece. So even if you install as a root, you need to run this, and then when you kick off the process as a root, the Storm will automatically go as a non-root because of this script. Okay, and that's about the installation. And going forward on the discovery, we now have the database finder. What we have currently in the previous releases, we have the ping finder, we have the file finder, you can have the trap. That is decommissioned, but now we have the database finder. What it means is you can have a database table that is filled with the host names and the IP address and whatever the attributes you like, and you can use this finder to feed into your database discovery process. One thing is this is not available yet via GUI, it's only command line, and you need to add that entry manually. I checked the configuration files. Unfortunately, there was no entry, but you just need to add one, similar to what you have in the df file and df ping. It's nothing different, but you can use this as an example. And there are a couple of configuration files that has examples where you can feed from NSIM database itself, or maybe from a tabular data warehouse, or maybe any other database you may have. That's the new thing about the discovery. And we do have analyze SQL stats. In phase -1, we often get complaints that the discovery takes forever, or the discovery is taking longer. If you actually use the analyze SQL stats for associated entire DNSIM schema or the specific stitcher, any queries that are taking longer than 10 seconds, they will be logged into the discovery log file. You need to be on a certain message level, that is info. Then you could see why they are taking longer, and you can analyze it for later time. Okay, DNSIM. This may be new for 3.9 customers, but 3.9 we do have the DNSIM out of the box. It is not enabled, and it's also not supported. But in 4.x, that's the default. It's enabled. It's nothing but a clone of NSIM database, but that resides in the discovery database, right? So in 4.1.1 we had DB. We no longer use it because SolidDB is sold out. But now SolidDB and this DNSIM is 4.2 is replaced by SQLite. This is open source. Obviously, you don't need any entitlements, etc. The old format to access the DNSIM still works, the one in blue, and there is a new service for the DNSIM, so you don't need to define the credentials and whatnot to access the DNSIM service. If you are using the old format in 4.1.1, you do need to define the username and password, but 4.2 that's not a requirement. So the discovery obviously has multiple phases. Phase 1 to 4. 1 to 3 is basically we actually talk to the devices. It can be several means, such as Snmp, Telnet, or maybe pull collectors, whatnot. In phase -1, we also call phase 4, we correlate the topology that is discovered in all these three phases. Build the working entities, and I can move on to the next slide. No, that's not a good slide. Let's go back. And then the DNSIM comes into role. We build actually all the tables and whatnot that is pushed into the model process. In 4.1.1, you can access, the reason I have put 4.1.1 as well, because there could be some confusion. That's why I have listed here. So, but for 3.9 and earlier customers, this is all pretty new. So you can go with the version you are after. In 4.1.1, when you're accessing, you can actually use third-party clients to access the DNSIM database, that's SolidDB. It has an interfaces file that you can query to the specific port, and you can open that. Whereas in 4.2, the SQLite, you can't query using third-party tools. It has to be OQL. It is embedded into the discovery database. You can read more on that SQLite.org. So, yeah, mainly the change for 3.9 customers is the NCP class gets instantiated with the NCP when the discovery pushed into model. Model actually reads the class and assigns a class name during the time. Now in 4x that's not the case. So in 3.9 the disco and NCP class, they don't talk to each other. In 4x that class instantiation is done in phase 4. And then we assign the entity IDs during this DNSIM process, but they are not the same entity IDs assigned by the NSIM/model. Whatever you see in the GUI, let's say you go into hop view and or network views, you look at the structure browser, you have the entity ID. They are assigned by the NSIM with the combination of model process. That is still happening. So the entity IDs in DNSIM and NSIM, they won't match, but they are different. And you can see here the list of all subphases of DNSIM, what we are doing. So that all falls under phase 4. So the DNSIM customization, they made it quite simpler, unlike 4.1.1. Everything goes into one single file here, and you can create new tables and whatnot. And there are a few steps you need to do every time you make a change. You want to, you can delete that NCP disco, the domain name folder, and then kick off the discovery process. The tables are built on the fly when the discovery process comes up. The key thing is whatever you do in the DNSIM, you also need to repeat the same thing in the NSIM database because they are kind of replica in terms of schema. And then the discovery profiling metrics. This is not new. This came out probably 3.9 fixed pack 4, and it is also available in 4.1.1 and whatnot. This profiling data will give you the overall status of your network. So how long the phase 1, 2, 3 took, and how long the phase 4 was happening in your discovery cycle, and how long the transfer from discovery to model took, and the total time spent on the discovery. And we have the entities here. I don't know if you can get this. Okay. The total number of entities that are discovered, the devices, and the access means how many devices you have SNMP access, how many interfaces are there for those devices having SNMP access, and finally the discovery memory and model memory. So this could be very handy for users when they are trying to isolate any major changes to their network. You can run this query once a day to see if there are any changes to your network. If it is a too dynamic, if we have a too dynamic environment, this may not be handy. But if you have kind of a static, and if you see major changes here, this will give you some indication, something went that night, discovery, and so forth. That's pretty much on the discovery, some of the changes. And continuing, we have onto the Polar. Whenever you define the interface filters on a large domains, the startup time of the Polar really takes a while. That's including the 4.2 GA build. That is now addressed. It's the fix is included in the interim fix 2 that's available as of yesterday. And then we have another introduction. So quite a few customers asked, how do we validate if the Polar is really polling without having to run tools like a TCP dump or maybe Wireshark or whatever? How do we validate it's really doing what it is supposed to? And then if you want to check the status of any SNMP monitors for a given device, there is no way we could do it. Even though we list the actual monitors, it doesn't tell us, for example, SNMP link state, what is the status of IF admin, IF operational status, and so forth. There's no way to do that. So now with the introduction of this particular fix, you can now see each and every interface status. There is a new table called Snmp poll status that's sitting in the monitors database via OQLand, and you want to only expose this when you are trying to troubleshoot or when you are trying to validate. You don't want to run this on a frequent basis unless you have some issues there. It's a hidden table. That's pretty much self-explanatory. The fix is not available in the interim fix. You would need to request from support if you need it. Now, coming to the historical poll data, we have many who store the poll data into the NSIM, and then they migrate the data into the Tivoli data warehouse to keep that for a longer term. So all this historical data now resides in the NSIM database and is managed by Apache Storm. So what is that Apache Storm? It's basically the open source, and it's a real-time distributed computation system. It does a lot of paralleling processing of a lot of data, and it's obviously multi-threaded process. The Apache Storm itself has a multiple sub-process, such as Zookeeper, Nimbus, and Storm Supervisor. There are 3 processes associated to the Storm. And there is a supervisor process that controls all these 3. I've tried to list whatever I can theoretically, so I don't need to go through all these bulletins one by one. But in theory, you don't need to manage this anytime. It gets laid down, and it is running all the time. So you have literally very minimal work or any work to do unless there are some issues with the historical data. So the supervisor dprocess has a configuration file. If at all, if you have a need to change the user that was originally supposed to kick off, but now you decide to run as a different user, you can make the changes here. The starting and stopping the Storm processes using the same script, that is ITNM start or stop, but with the parameter as a Storm. And let's say you have a multi-domain, multi-host, or there are a couple of scenarios. A single with a multi-domain, you will only have one Storm running on that instance. So if at all, if any, the Storm goes down, you need to address that failure, why it has gone down. But if you have a scenario where you have a multi-host, a multi-domain, only one Storm will be active. Obviously, this is not a cluster environment. If one Storm goes down, the second one, or whichever is in the queue, will take over. I'll move on to the next slide. So there are quite few new tables because of Apache Storm that was introduced here. For the reporting purposes, there are 5 different views. One is the daily data, weekly, monthly, yearly. And then obviously there is a raw data that we store for just for an hour time. And after that 1 hour, the data is aggregated into various different tables. So what are we storing? What does Polar store? I haven't listed purposefully ICMP because you know pretty much how that is done. But for Snmp link state, it is a quite unique case. Unless there is a state change to an interface or interface condition, we don't get alert, we don't store the data, but that's now changed. We store the results every 15 minutes. and what values we store are listed here. And it's also pretty much detailed in the documentation. So if you need more information on that, you can go and look at there. So now you may ask, if we're already storing in the data in the NSYM database, why do we need integration with the ITM, right? This is pretty much to monitor the ITNM process and the discovery stats and whatnot. There are some customers who still use this. This is mainly based on the MOSFETs, right? Manage our stuff with our stuff. I've given a presentation a couple of years ago which talks about the ITM setup completely and integration with ITNM. I've given the link there. The slides 63 to 67 are relevant for 4.2. If you don't need that availability slash monitoring the process via ITM, then you won't need that integration. So moving on, so for the ITNM gateway, there are quite a few improvements there. We no longer have NCO gate inserts file that talks about various events and whatnot. ITNM 4.2 still support this, and you can include actually the event map under the probe rules. And as part of, since RCA is a plugin under the gateway, there is a new event map for the chassis failures. Previously, we don't have exclusive chassis failure event map. That is now introduced in 4.2. And you can define appropriate precedents in the probe rules itself. Say you have EMS 5620 or whatever. And if you have a specific events that are tied to a main chassis, you can allocate the highest precedence, suppressing the other events based on your requirement. And if you want to know how to customize the event ID coming from pollers, I've put a link there where you can modify the event ID coming from the pollers as well. Moving on to the GUI, I think this is the major and the key for 4.2. Finally, we are into the dash. It's all applet free, mainly the ITNM functionality. If you talk about the network views and hop views, where we used to rely quite heavily on the JRE versions and the specific versions for specific releases and whatnot. But the JRE is still a requirement if you are going to use the active event list. Instead, you can use the event viewer, which is going to eventually replace the AEL. And if you are integrating with ITNCM, ITNCM still relies on the Java thick client. You need to have a specific version though. For 6.4.2, the requirement is 1.8, the build 73 or lower. I had 74 version, I had issues, I had to downgrade it, so that's something to note. This is documented though. And obviously this is all a different layout now. Under the incident we have the network availability, all the views and Snmp MIP graph and browsers and so forth. And the discovery has its own panel. And obviously under the administration we have the database access and the network polling. So that is divided into 3 segments here. The tooltips are vastly improved. You can copy and paste the content, and the tooltips also displays the icons, and it displays the actual status, whether the red, it has a critical event, whatever they are. It also shows the managed state. This is one favorite of mine, this GUI improvements. One is the search function within the network views. You do have this search function, but not to this level in the past. It doesn't support the wildcard, but you can feed the initial IP address or names and hit return. That will show all the matching. The other cool part is you have the navigation within the network views. It's more like a Google Maps style navigator. You can center, zoom. It does move 4 different directions, and you can go incrementally plus or minus. So topology maps loading with the status. In previous case, we used to have that JRE client, which means the entire task is done at the client level. Now that is moved to the server level. But the rendering could be taking a while. So what they have done is it's a lightweight versus full weight. The layout is first drawn without any status. That's more of the lightweight, and then the status is propagated. So this is done in 2 phases. If you are loading a large map, you can see pretty much the difference, the lag there. But if you have a very small domain, if you are sitting on the probably same network, with a good connectivity, you may not see much difference. But try to load a large view, then you will see the rendering is happening in multiple phases. Network health dashboard. So this is completely new for ITNM 4.2 and is only available for users that have a NOI license. If you are a standalone ITNM 4.2 user, you will not have this functionality. The network health dashboard is a separate package that you need to download from Password Advantage, and you need to lay it down on top of ITNM. Obviously, in this particular dashboard, you can see here we have multiple widgets combined here. All you are seeing here is a combination of 3 products, Omnibus, and the very bottom right-hand corner, you have the ITNCM, the Configuration Manager timeline, and obviously the ITNM in the mix. Let's talk into each widget separately. So you know more about the network views. I'll skip that piece and move on to the other ones. So you have the unavailable resources. This is mainly configured for 4 different policies. One is Snmp pole failure events, the link state, and the chassis at 2 level, chassis and interface ping level. You can see overall the unavailable resources within your network from this particular panel. And the very bottom to it, you have the percentage of availability. It's completely opposite to what you're seeing in the top. What is the actual trend of your availability of your network? This is derived from your the chassis ping. It's a combination of both the events and the polar historical data aggregation. And you also have the network manager polling chart. This supports 2 formats, either graph mode or the table format. It shows the top 10, the poll metrics of top 10 devices. The key thing to note here is, when I say top 10, they are not top talkers. They are the one actually who are having a bad response time, right? And again, this is correlated from the historical poll data. And then you can navigate, you can drill down further. You can select one device, you can drill down further into individual devices to see the specifics of a given device. Okay, within the dashboard, you have on the very bottom right-hand corner, you have the event timeline coming from the ITNCM. Whenever you pick up a view, a network view that has specific devices, this particular widget is synced to all the devices that have all the devices in that specific view, and The timing options are, it talks about the first occurrence and last occurrence of that event, if you have made any changes to the device configuration. And the granularity is pretty much very neat here. You can go from the 15 minutes over all the way to the 6-hour X and Y graph versus 30 minutes over 12 hours or 60 minutes over 24 hours. Again, this data is correlated from the omnibus events. But if you don't have the IT and CM integration at all, then you will only see the actual alerts without the timeline. So the installation is pretty much coming via installation manager of this health dashboard. If you don't have the health dashboard, all you have is the show performance tool. If you right click on a device under the poll data and MIBs, you will have this option, which pulls the data from the historical poll data. And then you have a specific requirement, you need to be on 4.2 and other products. It has its own database connection. And obviously the integration for Omnibus and NCM is listed in the docs. It's pretty simplified, so you don't need to do much work there. There are a couple of properties file associated to that, and then specific user roles to access the dashboard. The first two are associated to the ITNM. The very last one, CM dash service, is coming from IT and CM if you have the integration there. Let's pretty much summarize some of the highlights of 4.2. I haven't covered the new collectors. There are quite a few collectors, both Perl and Java based in 4.2, mainly the EMS I'm talking about. Coming to the known issues, so the deployment is pretty seamless compared to previous versions, but when we try to access the reports, the administration utility, it fails with an error. Just remove that jar file that takes care of that. And then the ITNM admin, even though you have the appropriate rights, it does get the authorization error when you're trying to access the reports. Yeah, the resolution steps are a little long, but once you take care of that, the ITNM admin or any other user, you have to follow the same steps. That will do the trick. And Web GUI, I spent almost half a day trying to figure out what's going wrong with this. Whether you pick the right version or not, it kept failing with the post-install configure error. That's because when you select the WAS deployment, if you pick up both the application client as well as application server, if you don't pay attention to the actual JRE being laid down, it only lays down 32-bit JRE. It doesn't lay down the 64-bit. The Web GUI in the post-install configure, especially looking for the 64-bit. So I have to uninstall the and and then select the 64-bit version coming from server edition. And then if you lay down at that point the Web GUI, the installation goes fine. I think that's pretty much enough. Oh yeah, the migration path for existing customers, you need 9 fixed-pack 3 or later versions, or 4.1 or 4.1, or it can be, if you have a 4.2 test system, if you want to clone it to the production, you can still do it. No migration from 3.8. The migration is again two-fold process. It's nothing different to old, but they have rewritten completely the scripts and made it a lot easier, where you can see the changes and your customization and whatnot. That's pretty neat there. And the limitations are you can't migrate the data from Windows. ITNM system. And the recommendations are, if you are going to deploy 4.2, you need to be on, you also top it up with the interim fix 2 that got out yesterday. And the dash requires a couple of, you need to be on a separate fixes. They are not in the fix central, they are in more like a community. I've given a link to make it easier. You just need to go there and download the patch 2 or patch 3 based on the requirements. I have deployed the patch 3 for this installation to be successful. So I'll open for the questions. Before that, I want to put some topics for in the coming months or weeks. Since I've spent a bit of time on the installation, I would like to make this as a task where you can deploy all the product pieces in less than 4 hours. I'll come with a lot of screenshots, maybe the GUI and console 2 modes. Hopefully I'll deliver this next month sometime or following month. If you have any other ideas, if you think that I haven't covered what you're expecting in this call, I would take your advice and suggestions. I will try to fulfill it. If not me, somebody else, one of my colleagues may cover. And we'll walk through probably one of the sessions, polar functionality, and then exclusive session for network health dashboard, because that's quite big. At this point, I would like to open for questions, and let me go through it. Kelsey, where do you see actually the questions? I see it now.
They're located in that questions box. Do you see that?
Yeah, I just detached it. Okay, thanks. So I'm going to read the questions. Maybe I can bring the questions here. Can you see my questions now? So
only you can see the questions, so you can just read them off and answer them as you go.
Okay. The first question, reports that can be obtained. That doesn't make sense, but I'll read the second question. So we are moving away from a single database type and from a standard TW structure to using multi-database types, SQLite, Oracle. Are there more databases besides these? And also the SQLite, you don't need to feel that as a database that resides in the discovery itself. So you won't really find a difference. All you care is now, what is your NSIM database type, right? That's mainly DB2/Oracle. Those are the only 2 databases that ITNM 4.2 supports. Yeah, knowing SQLite, how to handle it, how to run the queries would be handy. I would advise you refer to that URL I have given you. The same syntax works on the OQL land as well. The other question is, does the Google Map integration work with the 4.2? Yes, it does. It also does work with the 4.1.1 as well. Are we able to get more detailed info like device names from the Disco profiling data? No, not really, but there are reports that talks about your asset discovery. You would go onto the asset reports. You can run one of the report that talks about which vendor devices you have and which model and whatnot. That may be handy, but not via Disco profiling data. The retention period of the raw D10 and CPOL data is controllable. No, I think that is right now is set to 1 hour. I'm not sure if you could change that, but I'll take that question. and I can follow up with you. Is it possible to customize the tooltip content? I don't know the answer either. I will take that offline. Can ITNM be installed without installation manager? No, that's the only way to go forward. But remember this, the installation manager is just one piece you lay down as a starter. And you can have all your media, such as ITNM, WAS, you name it, right? You can put them on a shared folder wherever, untar them, whatever, and then run the installation manager on each server and lay them down. The job is pretty easy coming to the 4.2 because of installation manager. I hope I can demo this probably in the coming feature talk, but this has really made it simpler. Next question, discovery, customization, and enrichment. I haven't covered details, but I have written a post on the DW answers. I don't know how many people are familiar with the DW answers. That's the one place where you can engage most of the support folks with your quick questions you may have. And rather than opening tickets and whatnot, you may want to post the ticket, your questions there. If not me, somebody else will answer. So a lot of people are watching that DW answers. It's kind of a replacement for the old tradition DCFs, the tech notes process. It's more social, where you can post the comments and feedback, and it can be long going. Okay, so Manjit was asking, can that be part of your next session? That is correct. Yeah, I'll try to cover that. Is there an ITNM agent for IBM Monitoring 8? I don't know the specific versions of IBM ITM monitoring. So the requirement is you need to be on 6.3, and the ITNM agent for ITM is only, I guess, compatible for that release. But if you're asking about the later release, I doubt we have it, but I can cross-check that. If you leave your email address, I guess I will get that from Kelsey, but I can follow up and close those open-ended questions. Does it also use NetFlow or SFlow for monitoring? I'm not sure if I followed that question, but there is an integration from NPI, Netcool Performance Insights. That's completely a different piece, which is a completely separate topic. Probably you could rephrase your question, then I'll come back to you. ITNM, can it monitor Snmp v3? Yeah, it's nothing new. So v1, v2, v3. It can be any version. Does 4.2 require to be run on Linux only? No, it's a multi-platform. It's Linux, that is a two-flavor, Red Hat /SUSE, and then AAX 6.1 and 7.1. Is there going to be a NOI follow-up talk in the month? Not me, but I'm planning to cover the health dashboard that is a combination of the 3 products. That won't cover NPI because the NOI covers quite few products in the mix. If you already have a 4.1.1 integrated with the dash, will upgrading to ITNM 4.2 break this integration? So yeah, if we are going to use the same dash for 4.2, first of all, you need to be on the specific versions. I don't know what versions you are on 4.1.1, but I guess you can uninstall the 4.1.1 piece and make sure your WAS and JAS for JAS SM are at the required levels. Then you can put the 4.2 there. But remember, we always advise customers to do side-by-side install. This is never an in-place upgrade. The in-place upgrade so far is happening good on the Omnibus land, mainly for the core, but not for Web GUI and so forth. So same story goes for 4.2 as well. You would want to have a separate instance and then migrate the data. You mentioned SQLite is being shipped now. Does this replace DB2, which was previously shipped? No. So the SQLite is only used by the discovery process, and it's embedded within the discovery. And the DB2 is /Oracle are supported for your regular NSIM database that is used by ITNM. So they are two different pieces. Yeah, the SQLite is shipped with the 4.2, but you won't notice it really as running unless you query for a specific process. And you are entitled for that, and it's the open source. So no entitlement needed. Let me make that statement clear. Do we need an additional server for upgrade? Can we upgrade in the same server? Yeah, as long as you use the different ports, you can have as many versions as you like. I have on one box 3.9, 4.1.1, and 4.2 running. And but using the same database, but different database instance names. The issue about dash load balance and ITNM is solved. I need more details on the load balancing. So when it comes to the GUI part, we have the ITNM failover on the back end. When it comes to the GUI, I think we still have some gaps there. If we have multiple dash instances, if one dash goes down, our second dash will take over, or does it have any load balancing? There are still some gaps, but I can take that offline and get a feedback from product management rather than myself. Does 4.2 support Oracle Rack? Yes, it does, and so is 4.1.1 Fixpack 1, I guess. Was the architecture of the aggregation data based on TNPM expertise or some other technology? I don't think we want to compare with the TNPM, but we do have some customers who are planning to use in place of TNPM. So I don't want to say that, but that's what they are using. Now, I don't know what architecture they followed. I don't have a complete answer. But if you are keen on that, I'm happy to answer and get a clarification from management. Who worked the integration with the Google Maps? I don't know, someone in development, but if you have more specific questions, feel free to email me. I'll take this offline. The link for DW answers, I will post it. I will actually, all these questions I'll try to post on the on the same URL somewhere on the IBM UC website, so you can read all the answers. I'm also interested in the retention period of the Polar process. Could you please send me the answer to this question? Yeah, will do. Okay. If migrating from 3.9 to 4.2, can you install 4.2 on the same server as 3.9 is running? Does IAM conflict with the DE? No, so they don't conflict. And you can have both installations running on the same box. But make sure you use a different ports mainly for the database and whatnot. Since we are moving away from client Java applet processing, does it have any impact on backend horsepower? Do we need to have more processing power to support multiple users? That's a good question. So you could probably engage one of your account manager to give you the performance guide that you have to sign up the NDA, then they can share with you what they have tested. And but to answer the technicality, I guess you have to have a recommended hardware resources mainly for the database. What's your email ID to ask the follow-up questions? I'll share in the email. It's in the actual presentation that will be posted on the web, so you can just get from there. Anything on the database sizing? So again, that goes back to the performance team. So if you If you are internal, you can probably ping me. If you are external, you can send me official email. Then I can actually hook up with the product management to get the performance guide, whatever we tested and what kind of configuration they use to what levels they have been tested. I think that's all the questions we have. Kelsey, I guess I'll hand over this back to you unless I see any more questions in the last minute. Feel free to again share your thoughts about what future topics you would like to see, mainly in the NOI suite, and we would like to promote that and deliver that in the coming months.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Krishna, for taking the time to present today, and thank you everyone for attending today's webcast. Feel free to continue any discussions in the Optimizing IT and Service Management forum on the IBM Middleware User Community website. The link is located in your chat box right now. Again, the recording and slides of today's presentation will be available tomorrow in the webcast archives. You will receive a follow-up email with a link. As you exit, please take a few moments to fill out the post-event survey to help us improve future events. We truly appreciate your feedback, and this concludes today's event. Thank you, and have a fantastic day.
Thank you.